Trump, and there is no report that any shots were fired. So a serious incident, but in terms of the proximity, not as close as the last close call. The individual spotted by a Secret Service agent who fired directly in his direction. Ruth then fled. A witness was able to take pictures of that fast-moving, developing escape, and officials say that enabled law enforcement to swiftly both locate and arrest him without further incident, without, for example, having to shoot at or kill him, as they did in the live-action scenario at the last assassination attempt. We're going to show you what NBC News has obtained, which is body camera footage of the moment. This is courtesy of the arresting officer.
Driver! Stop. Walk straight back! Yep. You want to go in? Keep walking!
What's your name, Austin? Ryan?
You could see the apprehension there, cooperation with those sheriff's deputies, and as you can see, the swift release of this body camera footage. There are incidents where it takes much longer to get it. This is of the highest national security import, and they have released at least that clip. Now, this is a second close call that involves a very top Secret Service protectee, and it quite clearly immediately renews several ongoing security concerns. I will briefly share them with you based on our evidence and reporting and going no further than what we think we know. First, the Secret Service faces questions about whether it's sufficiently resourced or even outmatched in the current threat environment. And lawmakers have already been working on that front. This renews that as you have this second incident. Second, America has, as a policy and legal matter, extremely lax gun laws and easy gun access as compared to many other places. So it is a obvious, straightforward question for policymakers, for lawmakers, to look at whether, given all this, that should be tightened to combat how would-be assassins or lone wolves can so easily get lethal weapons. I say obvious because it's a straightforward response to what is a deadly weapon threat, but it is politically controversial given the way gun politics work in this country. So there's the security issue, what would you do in policy, and then the politics of it. Third, the question about evidence. As I mentioned, what are the motives or influences on that earlier, now deceased shooter and this new suspect? Now, those kind of law enforcement questions and investigations take time. Speculation or politicized assumptions about that only detracts from the factual law enforcement process. Now, because of that last assassination attempt, the Secret Service also is currently operating without a permanently empowered leader. The agency's acting head, who came in after the last one left after the last assassination attempt, met, we can tell you, with former President Trump in Florida today. For his part, Trump did publicly thank the agents who handled the incident, as did Vice President Harris, who condemned the violence and called on the public to ensure this kind of incident doesn't lead to, quote, more violence. President Biden hitting similar themes today.
I've always condemned political violence. I always will in America. In America, we resolve our differences peacefully at the ballot box, not at the end of a gun. America suffered too many times the tragedy of an assassin's bullet. It solves nothing and just tears the country apart. We must do everything we can to prevent it and never give it any oxygen.
That was the president's remarks. We also have a report that President Biden and former President Trump did speak. They connected by phone today. So what you have there are the traditional calls for peace, for nonviolence, calm, and for following the facts. The suspect's apparent target, former President Trump, also went beyond thanking the agents, which I mentioned to you in our report, to also publicizing misleading and unproven statements about this incident and using a political lens to invoke this and his speculation or falsehoods about it within the political context of his political debates or campaign. I am not reading that part of Donald Trump's statement because it is unproven and speculative. It doesn't meet news fact-checking standards, no matter who it happens to come from, even as, of course, everyone from the president on down is very thankful that no harm was done and wish former President Trump well. Separately, a very powerful Trump ally, Elon Musk, posted a question on his platform X about the hypothetical assassination attempts towards other officials. He then retracted that, the inflammatory post, which came within a day of this incident, and in this season of heightened concern about political violence, even drew a specific rebuke from the White House, which warned it was irresponsible. Now, the Secret Service is planning to conduct an internal review about this incident. Officials are searching the suspect's properties and electronics for more information that might create a fuller picture about both how this happened, who, if anyone else, was involved. They always look at that. Right now, it has not been connected to anyone else, but they're going to go through everything, and how this individual might have had information or reasoned his way towards what was not an announced event. Was he lucky just going to a golf course, or did he have some way to figure out that Donald Trump, his intended target, apparently was going to be there? Those are a lot of the questions here in the early period of this. NBC's Jesse Kirsch has been reporting on this. He's live outside Trump's West Palm Beach Golf Club. What else can you tell us on the ground?
Yeah, so Ari, I want to show the viewers exactly what the scene is like over here. So this is the entrance to the golf club right behind me, and I'm going to have our photographer, Andy, back up a little bit, give you a sense. These are the bushes that line the outskirts of the golf club, and you can see they're quite thick. We can't see into the golf course from over here. They're probably at least 10 feet high, and these are the kinds of bushes that line this golf course for much of the property line. And so this is the kind of area that this person would have been going through to have a line of sight on the golf course. And as you mentioned, he did not have line of sight on the former president of the United States, according to authorities who briefed us a short time ago. We've also learned that the Trump campaign today, you mentioned the questions around Secret Service staffing and support and how that might need to change. The Trump campaign has asked the Secret Service for more resources, according to our reporting from earlier today. We also know from officials, and we had learned this yesterday as we continue getting more information about how this all unfolded. You mentioned 12 hours that the suspect was allegedly casing the area, if you will. His cell phone data showed him in this area for around 12 hours before the actual incident with the Secret Service. According to officials, Secret Service personnel always goes a hole ahead of the former president to survey the area in front of him, and that's the agent that spotted the barrel of a gun and fired shots at this suspect, who we now know is at the center of an apparent second assassination attempt. We've also learned more about the suspect who made his first court appearance today. He has a lengthy criminal history going back more than 2 decades, and he was apparently at one point smiling and laughing with his public defender in court today, Ari.
Jesse Kirsch on the ground, thank you. We turn now to Michael Matranga, a former Secret Service agent who's operated at the highest levels, including protecting President Obama. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm honored to be here.
Yes, sir. This is another serious incident in a serious time. Starting operationally, based on the public information on what we know, what do you see having happened here? What worked? What requires more scrutiny? What may not have worked?
I think what the general public needs to understand, and the American people need to understand, is that, there's been this talk that, former President Trump did not receive adequate protection from the United States Secret Service. And if you go back to look at July 13th, a former president or a candidate that is at that phase of the presidential election would not receive some of the special operations elements that he had on July 13th. Even these were the same individuals who took the shot to neutralize Thomas Matthew Crooks. And so since then, what I think we can see is that obviously they've made additional adjustments that seem to have worked. And so I don't think this is a complete failure at all. In fact, I don't think it's a failure. There was a successful interception of an individual who wanted to do harm. The methods of the Secret Service worked, having that forward advanced element out there sweeping the wood line. The only criticism that I would have is that the Secret Service has other assets.
Let me slow you down, because you're sort of jumping through a bunch. But just on what worked then. Walk us through what they're doing. They're out farther away from the target protectee, and they find something, and they engage with it because it was visibly a threat. In other words, had they found a suspicious person without a weapon, they might have had a different protocol. Just walk us through that, since this is all new.
Yeah, so the methodology of the Secret Service is that these elements remain a 1 or 2 or even 3 terrain features ahead and behind of the bubble, which the bubble is where the president or former president is. That methodology appeared to work. Their goal is to get out ahead, sweep the adjacent wood lines or properties that could have public-facing access, which is what happened here. The individual took the shots based upon what he or she deemed to be a threat, which ended up being a weapon. And I commend them for taking those shots and for taking that assertive action without anyone having to tell them to do that. So that actually worked, and I commend them for that.
Yeah, and you're referencing something we see in both federal policing or local policing. With people talk about a bad shot as a shot that probably shouldn't have been taken, but it might not have been a crime, right? A crime could be someone who happens to be in uniform, goes way outside the line of duty to do something terrible with their weapon, and then a good shot, right? A shot that was necessary, justified, legal, and in this case, for protective purpose, whether it connected with the target or not. So you're talking about what worked, and I would note, obviously, the arrest and the coordination there seemed to work. We reported that. Is there anything here that raises questions? We've talked about internal review. The acting head came down to talk to the former president today. Anything where you look at that and say, this may not have worked, or do you look at the questions around how was this individual lucky and they happened to be there when Trump was there because Mar-a-Lago is not a secret, or do you raise questions about whether they got some bit of information they weren't supposed to get?
Yeah, I think that, obviously I have concerns about how this individual was in that area 12 hours, up to 12 hours prior, when the director today advised that this was an off-the-record movement. This was not a scheduled movement. So how would he have had that forethought to know unless someone either leaked that information to him, and that could have been anybody. I think everybody automatically goes to FBI, Secret Service. This could have been, a golf course employee that had some forethought or information to know that the president was coming. But I still doubt that information was out 12 hours prior, because according to the director, that decision was made yesterday morning. So that's my biggest concern, is how did he get that information, and was he conducting counter surveillance that would basically give him a little bit of a precursor to knowing what the movements of the former president would be. So that's concern number one. Concern number two, and I think this is something that needs to be a policy change with the Secret Service, is that in the D.C. metropolitan area, when we would go to Andrews, when Obama would be playing, we would be utilizing outside resources like D.C. Metro SWAT or our emergency response teams to sweep those adjacent fence lines or wood lines. I think that we should be changing that policy to require that on any golf course movement or any golf course outing, that there needs to be 100% always someone in that wood line sweeping that fence line or wood line to ensure that individuals like this can't be lying in wait.
Yeah, understood. Michael Matranga, you've been very involved in all of this at your own level of service and helping us understand something that's a top priority to really any American who cares about our public safety and making sure that all these officials are safe so we can go about our public business. Thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too. Yes, sir. I will tell the viewers, anybody watching, that is, of course, the top story in the country, and we will stay on it. And if there are big developments tonight, I will bring them to you. But we turn now to the campaign that is still well alive. Kamala Harris pushing for a big labor boost heading to the Midwest, and she's calling in the big allies, the big O's, from Obama to Oprah.
Let us choose common sense over nonsense.
America's ready for a new chapter. America's ready for